Good Friday morning and welcome to Upper Left Sports. It is Friday, November 6th, and we are happy to be with you.
Thank you for joining us.
This morning, we're going to talk a Hawks-Bills preview. Hawks play, they go to Buffalo.
Big game.
On Sunday, that quote-unquote dreaded 10 a.m. Eastern start. So Hawks do have to go across country to New York. But let's dive right into it. Seahawks obviously coming off of a big win last week, bouncing back after the loss to Arizona. But I'll tell you what, this Buffalo team is a team that I think exceeded a lot of people's expectations. Josh Allen has taken a huge jump into year two. And, a few years ago, that Buffalo game may have been one of those that you said, you don't want to let them sneak up on you. Buffalo's not sneaking up on anyone this year.
No, there's no secrets up in Buffalo. Everyone knows what that team has. We saw the start of that team really the last few years. We've seen that defense take leaps and bounds and become one of the better defenses in the NFL. And now, much like you said, Josh Allen has taken that big step forward, brought the offense up, almost keeping pace with that defense. And this is a team sitting at 6-2 right now that is a dangerous team.
Yeah, let's look at the team comparison right now. Seahawks averaging just over 34 points a game. That's 10 points better than Buffalo. Buffalo has struggled the last few weeks on offense. Points against per game, pretty even there. Hawks giving up 28 points a game, not your standard Seahawks defense. Bills defense giving up almost 25 clips a game. And red zone efficiency, let's focus on that real quick, as I think that's a big difference you're seeing between these two teams, is when Russell Wilson gets the Seahawks into the red zone, they're scoring 88% of the time. And that's really, if you go back and watch the Bills film, that's what they're struggling, is getting the ball in the end zone. When they're in the red zone, not settling for three at 62% red zone efficiency.
Yeah, that's a huge stat when we look at it. And really, we haven't seen a team, run nearly as efficient in the red zone as Seattle in a long time. 88% of the time they're scoring TDs, and that's just a flat-out testament to Russell Wilson, to Shoddy calling the plays. And we look at the guys around Russell Wilson and those steps up they've taken, DK obviously being one of the best receivers in the league. And then everyone always seems to forget now with DK getting all the attention, Tyler Lockett is still an absolute threat, and he's been showing that this year as well.
Yeah, another big stat to take a look at here is a turnover ratio. Hawks are +7 on the year. Bills are now -1 on the season. That has changed over the last few games. And let's give the Bills a little bit of credit here, because the two losses they have are against Kansas City and against Tennessee, arguably the class of the AFC at this point.
Hard to argue that, man. Obviously, the two best teams they've played. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for the Bills there. But let's not let that take away from what this Buffalo team is. You did say it right away. Obviously, Seattle this year being +7 in the turnover ratio. While this defense may not be performing at a Pete Carroll level, they are still winning that battle. And that is something, since Pete Carroll has been in Seattle, he has always preached winning that turnover battle. And so that's allowed them to, really kind of be where they're at defensively and keep them in games.
I think a big difference we saw in last week's game versus San Francisco is Jimmy G was immobile. We now know about the ankle issues he's really having. The week before, this Hawks defense really struggled against a mobile quarterback like Kyler Murray. And in Josh Allen, who they're going to see on Sunday, this is a guy who can throw the ball but can also run the ball. He's got 227 rushing yards on the season. I think it'll be very interesting to see how this defense schemes against him. Are they going to blitz as much against a mobile quarterback? You do have Jamal Adams back. You do get Carlos Dunlap on the field for the first time. But what do you think? Do you think we're going to see a more conservative drop-back defense that we saw the Seahawks run early in the season? Or do we see a lot more blitzing like we saw against San Francisco?
I think with the danger that Josh Allen presents with his scramble ability, we're going to see a little bit more of that early season defense. I think that is the style of defense that Pete Carroll wants to play. You look at the game Bobby Wagner had last week, and that's never been a huge part of the way Seattle's used Bobby Wagner. He's never been that guy that's consistently rushing the QB. Obviously, we saw he's more than capable. But bringing Jamal Adams back into the fold is big. I think we're going to see him utilize Jamal Adams just like they did in the start of the season. They're going to turn him loose after Josh Allen. And I think it just allows you, when you have more pressure off the defensive line, bringing in Carlos Dunlap, it just allows you to play a little bit more coverage. which, tell you what, man, this Buffalo team, they've got some receivers out there as well. So we're going to need to lock up on the back end of that and let our guys up front do the work.
Yeah, Josh Allen, huge arm, very athletic, does get himself into a little bit of trouble when he's under pressure. You'll see he's got 5 picks on the season, but he's getting 8.3 yards per scramble. So it'll be very interesting to see how much do they blitz Jamal Adams. Do they even have somebody shadow Josh Allen a little bit? We'll see on Sunday. But talking about those Bills receivers that you just talked about, and they've got a good one. Stephon Diggs, we know him from his days up in Minnesota. And it's one of those instances where, let's talk about the situation up in Cincinnati for a minute. You know, A.J. Green, one of the top receivers in the league. Andy Dalton is gone. He's been almost non-existent in that offense. Go up the road a little bit to Indianapolis, and you've got a guy by the name of T.Y. Hilton, that when he had Andrew Luck as a quarterback, T.Y. Hilton was a top 5 receiver in the game. He loses Andrew Luck, hasn't been the same receiver since. We didn't know how Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen would mesh. We didn't know if Stephon Diggs was, his success was due to the offense. I'll tell you what, he's come to Buffalo, and he may be more dangerous than he even was in Minnesota.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, man. We look at Stephon Diggs, and he is a complete receiver. The guy can run every route on the book. And on top of that, man, he is a guy who can take the top off a defense. So he's a very versatile receiver. We've seen him immediately click with Josh Allen. Again, back to Josh Allen, taking that step up has allowed them to really develop a great connection on the outside. Stephon Diggs averaging over 12 yards a reception as well. So this isn't a guy necessarily who is a, dink and dunk, running wide receiver screens, only slants. He's not like that. He can run every route out on the field, and he's definitely going to be somebody, right now, Shaquille Griffin might still be out. He hasn't been cleared out of that concussion protocol, so it's definitely going to be somebody this defense is keyed in on.
Yeah, if you haven't had a chance to watch this Bills offense at work, Josh Allen has been impressive in most of his games, but Stephon Diggs really is that threat. I mean, when you're playing Seattle, we all know that DK can take the top off a defense. Stephon Diggs is a similar player that when the ball gets in his hands, special things happen, and Josh Allen looks at him a lot. He has Cole Beasley as kind of that under threat. Cole Beasley gets a lot of that third down work. They've got a stable of running backs that, when healthy, are special. We've kind of seen Devin Singletary, Zach Moss. Zach Moss has started to take more of the bell cow carries in that offense, especially down towards the goal line. Singletary, what you're going to see on Sunday is Singletary's more of that pass-catching running back. He's going to catch a lot of screens. You will see him a lot on third down as well. But at the end of the day, when Josh Allen needs a big throw, needs a big play, he's going to be looking at Stephon Diggs.
No doubt, no doubt. You said it. Cole Beasley's been great for Josh Allen. Like you say, gives him that underneath threat. And we look at Cole Beasley's history in the NFL, man. You want to talk about sure hands. He is that guy. So he really allows Stephon Diggs to get up the field a little bit more. And that's what's made this Buffalo team so dangerous.
Let's switch to the other side of the ball and look at that Bills defense that the Hawks will be playing on Sunday. Again, giving up just under 25 points a game on the season. No, they don't have 695 sacks on the season. They're not that good, but a very good pass rush. 19 interceptions is correct and 8 forced fumbles. Regardless, this is a very stout Bills defense that I think is going to give Russ a little bit of problems on Sunday.
Have to agree with you, man. And, graphics game, got to step that up. Your stats there actually are 19 sacks on the season and 5 interceptions. It's almost like I've been staying up late watching some other news that's been going on this week. But tell you what, man, this is an aggressive defense. And when you look at the points they're giving up per game, I don't think that's really necessarily a good indicator of the defense we're looking at. This is an aggressive defense. They are a ball-hawking defense. 8 forced fumbles on the season is big, and this is a team where ball security is going to be key. We've talked about Seattle winning the turnover ratio. However, if you are not locked in, this defense will take it away from you.
Seahawks played San Francisco last weekend. Kendrick Bourne did test positive for COVID-19. A day later, the test came back negative. However, that whole receiving corps was really put on the COVID watch list in last night's game. They did not fare well against the Green Bay Packers, but I think to this point, it's been really fortunate. We haven't seen any positive tests pop up with the Seahawks to this point. We will watch that as we head into the weekend to see. Hopefully, the whole team can make the trip to Buffalo. But I'll tell you one thing. In football, the test of a really good team is if you watch the team that they played and watch them the week after. Now, I know Jimmy G got hurt. I know Kittle got hurt. But when you see a team last night like San Francisco come out on Thursday Night Football and they looked beat up. They looked tired. They looked like they didn't want any piece of playing a game 4 days later. I think that's a huge testament to that physical game they had to play in Seattle on Sunday.
It really is. And we've talked about this for years with Seattle. You go back to the LOB days, Legion of Boom, and that was something that we saw teams the week after they played Seattle were very high percentage likely to lose their next game. So, again, you talk about the points per game that Seattle's given up, and while they, haven't been as good on that end of things as Pete Carroll likes, they keep the physicality, which is another thing that's been preached with this team. They compete every single play, and that's big. Nobody wants to go to Seattle and play them. Because unfortunately, you're going to be feeling it the next week.
We know last week the Seahawks were without two of their top running backs. Carlos Hyde is still doubtful for this week. Chris Carson will be a late week decision. Now, we were told last week that Chris Carson was a true game time decision. He wanted to go. He wasn't able to, at least to the medical staff, so we saw a lot of DJ Davis. And as much as DJ really came out and played well, the yards per clip was not what we see from Seattle rushers. I'd be shocked if we don't see I'd be shocked if we don't see Chris Carson on the field. I guess the question is it worth putting him out there knowing that he could hurt that foot further, or would we rather have a healthy Chris Carson down the stretch?
That's a great question, man. We talk about it. Chris Carson's had some injuries in the past, so it really comes down to, is he ready to run this weekend? Travis Homer will be back. That is a huge, huge advantage for Seattle. That adds back another good running back to their stable. Travis Homer, we've seen him pick up a lot of the third downs actually this season, and the reason for that, he might be the best pass-blocking running back on this team. So having him back does allow some more options for Seattle if Chris Carson isn't fully ready to go. They have more options than last week. But at the end of the day, we know the way this offense is going to run. It's going to run through Russell Wilson.
Yeah, they also picked up Alex Collins, a familiar name in Hawks land. He's on the practice squad should they need to call him up if Carson can't go. This is a guy with a lot of experience in the NFL who could see a lot of snaps on Sunday, again, if Chris Carson can't play. We're going to take a quick break here on Upper Left Sports. When we get back, we're talking UW Huskies and a 2020 season preview. And we are back on Upper Left Sports this Friday, and we're talking Huskies now. We did our WSU Cougar preview on Wednesday. This morning we're going to be doing a Huskies and Ducks preview, but let's go across the mountains over to the west side for a minute. And the first thing we need to talk about with this Huskies team is Chris Peterson is gone. Jimmy Lake is the new man over in Seattle.
That's a huge, huge change in Seattle. Chris Peterson, of course, really came into this program when a time that UW needed a change. They were coming off one of their worst seasons, and Chris Peterson had a proven track record down in Boise State. You might remember a guy by the name of Kellen Moore down there. They made quite an epic run over about 2 years. And Chris Peterson brought that mentality to Seattle and immediately changed that team, really put them back on the map. And we saw their recruiting take a huge jump with Chris Peterson as well. And that, we look forward to this year. It's only going to continue. But the big news here, Chris Peterson stepped down very unexpectedly. Nobody really saw that coming. Fortunately for UW, they have a guy by the name of Jimmy Lake who is in the program, familiar, and was an easy decision to hand the reins off to.
Yeah, there was a lot of surprise. I mean, right after the Apple Cup last year, Chris Peterson's news came out that he would be stepping back. And, it's kind of similar to a situation that we have in Spokane with Mark Few and Tommy Lloyd, is I think everyone knew that the day that Chris Peterson left, it was Jimmy's job. And the thing is he had other job offers out there. He could have left the program. I think those two had some conversations that he would get the opportunity, and he waited it out. The time's his now, and I think the question on everyone's mind is, before Chris Peterson took over this Husky program, they were struggling. The year that the Cougs didn't win a game, the Huskies were very close. They had years of no bowl appearances, and you never know. When a coach like Chris Peterson comes from a small school like Boise State, even with the success they'd had, will it translate to the next level? And it kind of felt like when he left Boise and came to Seattle, it was like taking Chris Peterson, and he was in a Chevy sedan, and you put him in a Ferrari getting to recruit guys to the Emerald City.
That's a huge change, man. You talk about recruiting. I mean, getting someone to Boise versus getting someone to Seattle. We talk about a beautiful scenery. We talk about an amazing campus, and the athletic department and the tools they provide there are absolutely elite as well. So I tell you what, man, he hopped in that Ferrari, and he definitely took off running. We saw him make a huge change, and it was just an immediate visual. You could see everything happening right there. You knew it was going to be good things for them.
And let's be honest, also one of the best scenes, one of the best stadiums in college football. And so will Jimmy Lake be able to continue that success that Chris Peterson saw, or will we see the Dogs take a step back to the pre-Peterson era? We don't know yet, and we won't know for a little bit of time as this week's game has been canceled against Cal due to COVID-19. But let's take a step back and look at the 2019 Huskies and how they finished up. 8-5 record on the season. They were 4-5 in the Pac-12. However, Las Vegas Bowl versus Boise State, 38-7, so ended the season on top. And the 2020 recruiting class has a 17 national rank, so that has to be a little bit of a head start for Jimmy Lake going in.
That's a huge start for him, man. I tell you what, we talk about would he be able to continue that recruiting. We've seen him bring in a great class right away. This team didn't quite finish last year the way that they had hoped. Of course, playing Boise State, not an in-state rivalry, but a game that UW wanted to win, and they came out and made a statement in that game. So props to them. It was a huge win, and you talk about the talent they're bringing in this year. It really is led by a local recruit. Great job from UW keeping the guys at home. Savell Smalls. This is a guy who played D-end in high school, was ranked number 30 in the nation, and he's going to come in. He's listed as a linebacker, but look for Savell Smalls to make a difference on this team right away. Again, he's leading that 17th ranked class in the nation. So this is a talented team coming in. We've got some experience issues we're going to get in a little bit, but when you talk about the talent out there, they have every bit of it.
We know it all starts with the quarterback position, and Jacob Eason has moved on. Guy came up, transferred from Georgia, local kid, ended up having a great career with the Huskies. And you look back a couple years ago to the stable of quarterbacks that they had up at Mount Lake, and there were plenty of 4 or 5 star recruits that were just sitting there waiting to play. However, a lot different story this year, and we still don't have a starter named by Jimmy Lake. Who are you expecting to see under center that first game for the Huskies, whenever that may be?
That's a tough call, man. You talk about a stable of options. UW has a stable of quarterback options as well. So that depth chart, like you said, Jimmy Lake's keeping it close to the chest. He gets another week to do that as well, kind of keep everybody on their toes. But we really don't know. We don't have a quarterback who is, a returning starter. Of course, Jacob Eason's gone. But let's take a look through them. Let's start with a guy who probably comes in with he does come in with the most experience playing college football. And that's going to be Kevin Thompson, a graduate transfer who spent 4 years at Sacramento State in the Big Sky. If you're an Eagles fan, you are probably very, very familiar with him as well. This is a guy last year, 2019, was the Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year, and he finished 3rd in the Walter Payton Award voting. If you're not familiar with FCS, the Walter Payton Award is the FCS Offensive Player of the Year. So this is a guy, like I said, he comes in, he has the experience, and we, of course, look for that experience to usually give you that nod on opening day. But this team is not alone. He's not alone in that quarterback room. We've got multiple other guys here who are great options. Let's start with Ethan Garbers, who was recruited, and he comes in as a freshman. He's a 4-star QB out of Corona Del Mar High School in California. He was, had offers from Georgia, Miami, among other schools, so he had plenty of big-time schools to go to. He did choose to commit to UW. Dylan Morris, another 4-star QB out of Graham, Washington. He had offers from Oregon, Notre Dame, and Nebraska. So again, we talk about big-time offers for these guys, and they're choosing to come up to Seattle and compete up there as well.
Yeah, we were talking about it with our WSU season preview. Is would Rolovich choose a guy who he knew he could have for 4 years, or is it more of a win-now choice? Maybe that's one and the same. I think with the Huskies, you look at this and say, a guy like Kevin Thompson comes in, he's only got a year of eligibility. Can he come in and take this Husky team to a bowl this year, or are they going to start looking for the future? But I also think as Eag fans, we can look to an example right here where a guy left Cheney, went to Oregon, and had a little bit of success.
A little bit, man. You might remember him. Vernon Adams did absolutely amazing things. And if it wasn't for an opening day injury with his year with Oregon there, that could have been a totally different season, even better than it was. So we've definitely seen guys make that jump from the Big Sky to the Pac-12 and be successful as well. Again, though, if we talk about options, if it's not working with Thompson, if he doesn't get the nod, there's even an additional QB we didn't mention yet, and that's Jacob Sermon, who's actually the only returning QB that has thrown a pass for UW. He threw 3 passes last year. But this is a 6'5", pro-style QB. Again, another local kid out of Bothell, Washington, also a 4-star recruit. He might have the highest, recruiting pedigree behind him, being 27th on ESPN's top 300 in his draft class. And we talk about big offers. This guy had offers from Alabama, LSU, Michigan, and Louisville. I mean, that right there is just that's the names of all names. So they have all the options up in Seattle. I do think they're going to lean towards the experience of Kevin Thompson, but we know if it doesn't work out, we know Jimmy Lake's got options.
Well, we were hoping to know the answer to that on Saturday. Again, that will have to wait as the game versus Cal has been delayed. So hopefully just one more week until we find out who the Huskies put under center. Let's flip to the other side of the ball and talk about this Huskies defense. And Elijah Molden from 2019, he had 79 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions, and 12 pass deflections.
What more can you want out of a cornerback? Elijah Molden has really led this defense. They are a physical, hard-hitting defense, and he just is every bit of that description right there. So, again, UW over the last few years, they've kind of coined themselves, and I think they fully earned it as well. They are West Coast DBU. This secondary is absolutely loaded, and I tell you what, man, they still focus on defense. Actually, if you remember Jimmy Lake on offense, he reported their scrimmage score, and he first tweeted out, it was like 58 to 55, and then a few minutes later you follow that up with, kidding, this isn't the SEC. We still play defense. The scores were in the 20s. So you know this team focuses on the defensive side of the ball. And I tell you what, man, they might be a little bit young overall, but they've got some dudes back there who are ready to come out. This D-line, while it might be young, is big, it is physical, and you know they're going to be getting after the ball this year.
Yeah, defensive-minded head coach, and the Huskies do have that head coach locked up through 2024, so we do expect them to kind of stay to script on that. When we get back, we're going down a state and talking Oregon Ducks football and a 2020 season preview. And welcome back on Upper Left Sports this Friday morning. We just got done talking Huskies football, and we're going to go down to the great state of Oregon and talk about going into this Pac-12 North season, the most hyped team, and that is the Oregon Ducks. Last year, Ducks had a good season, but they have lost quite a bit, and that starts with the guy under center, number 10, Justin Herbert.
Yeah, it's a huge replacement. Justin Herbert, obviously, if you've watched any NFL this year, we've seen him take a huge leap. Let's talk about last year, though. Justin Herbert had 3,471 passing yards on the season, 32 touchdowns, and 6 picks. So this is a guy who put up big numbers, who played just about every snap of football possible for Oregon, and those are immediately big shoes to fill. Fortunately, we're talking about the Oregon Ducks here, so we've seen it before. We've seen them put quarterbacks in the league. And every year you kind of wonder who that next guy is going to be. Oregon always seems to put somebody out there who's ready to take the reins.
Yeah, a 12-2 record just a season ago. This was a team going into last season that really had national title aspirations. Justin Herbert was being talked about as possibly the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. And I think had everything clicked, this was a team that could have done that. They started to play a lot better at the end of the season. Finished number 5 in the AP poll. Did play Utah in the Pac-12 championship and beat the living crud out of them, 37-15.
No doubt.
This was a Utah team that, if Utah could have pulled off that win, they were probably headed to the college football playoff. Oregon really was playing their best ball at the end of the season. And then to cap it all off, if you're a Pac-12 fan, if you're an Oregon fan, at the end of the season, what do you want to see? You want to see your team hoisting up a Rose Bowl trophy down in Pasadena. They did. It was a 28-27 thriller against Wisconsin.
Yeah, that was a huge win for them, man. You know, you talk about it. If you're not in that college football playoff, that Rose Bowl is really the epitome of what you're going for at that point. So props to Oregon. They really pulled together, getting 2 huge wins at the end of the season and adding another Rose Bowl trophy to that trophy case.
We talked about, had everything been able to click last season, we did think this was a team that could compete for a national championship. And going back and rolling back the film, the place that this offense really struggled was on third down or in key plays, big situations. The long passing game really struggled. The intermediate passing game really struggled. And you have to chalk it up to one of two things. It's either quarterback play or it's coaching. And as you mentioned, we've seen Justin Herbert move on to the NFL, start earlier than a lot of people expected. And a lot of those issues that he had in Eugene have not shown their face against NFL defenses. So it makes you wonder what was really going on last season.
Yeah, you absolutely have to wonder. We've seen Justin Herbert really look like he has all of the tools at the NFL level. So it does bring up those questions. Was it more coaching or scheme based? And so this year we're really going to look to see, how does Oregon bounce back from that? How do they fit their scheme to the team that they have this year? So it's going to be a big season for them. They have very big aspirations. Of course, we're talking about a team that brought in, again, the 11th ranked national class of a recruiting class. So they've got dudes coming in, and now we just got to see how they put it together this year.
Mario Cristobal did bring in a new offensive coordinator this season. That's Joe Moorhead. You may know him as the head coach from Mississippi State just last year. He left. Mike Leach is now there. Joe Moorhead is in Eugene. So very interesting to see what he will be able to do with this offense. And like always, let's start with the quarterback position. And Justin Herbert is gone. They do have somebody with a little bit of experience, though.
They do. Tyler Shaw takes over. This is a guy who got a few appearances last year and a few of the blowout games. And when he did get a chance, he showed he might be ready. He's this guy who went 12 of 15 last year for 3 TDs, no interceptions. He was very efficient out there. He's been in the system. He's familiar with the coaching staff. So I know they're comfortable in him this year. And I tell you what, man, you want to talk about talent around a QB, Oregon has all of the talent. They actually return star running back C.J. Verdell as well. This is a guy who's put up back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in the rushing game. So we know he's got help, and we really look for that Oregon offense to get back to exactly what we expect out of them. And I think we're going to see a little bit more chemistry this year on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, in today's college football, we see a lot on those depth charts, and so a starting quarterback has not been named. Tyler Shaw going into spring camp. Mario Cristobal did say it was his job going into spring. Sure. I think everybody expects him to emerge with that job. But C.J. Verdell, this is a guy, last season, he had 1,220 rushing yards on 197 carries. That's 6.2 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. He is a physical running back. He is a guy that you can run between that A and B gap. And we know Oregon, with that read option offense, is going to want to get C.J. Verdell very involved in this offense early on. But again, the stable of running backs, they have 3 returning running backs that combined for 2,200 yards last season. Dye's back there. They've got a lot of different options that they can start with. And for a guy like Shaw that doesn't have the experience, that's going to be a big, big deal week 1.
It really is, man. And Oregon, they are looking at an embarrassment of riches in the backfield this year. And that, again, in itself puts a whole nother issue on a coaching staff's plate. When you have running backs that are all as talented as Oregon does, these are guys that you want to find ways to get them on the field. So, much like you said, man, having that around your new starting quarterback is a huge, huge advantage. It gives you that ability to change your schemes a little bit if needed. If your quarterback's struggling, you have other options to get the ball down the field. So, really looking for the rushing game to be a main factor in Oregon's offense this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned as well, he's going to have some options to throw to. That includes Johnny Johnson, who really was the wide receiver last year that stepped up, ended up with 836 yards on the season. Jalen Redd's also back, 465 yards just last season. So he gets both of his top 2 receivers back. Both had 7 touchdowns, and he'll have them week 1.
Yeah, no, they both had 7 touchdowns, which is big. It just tells you that even though they didn't put up eye-popping numbers with the yards, these guys are dangerous when it comes to scoring the ball. And let's not just talk about these two. this is a team that is also loaded in that wide receiver area as well. We've got sophomores Micah Pittman and Brian Addison both coming back. Both are primed for huge leaps this year and huge ceilings. This is something we've seen out of Oregon year after year after year, is their skill position players. They come out, they are almost always the most athletic people on the field, and it just comes down to, can you get the ball to your stars on the outside? And I tell you what, man, talk about options. They've got them all this year. It's not going to be just 4 wide receivers. This is a team that will spread the ball around because they have the ability to do so with such a deep receiver core.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Ducks did have Penei Sewell opt out of the 2020 season. He's their stud offensive tackle, expected to be a top 5 draft pick in next year's draft. Obviously, can't question that young man's decision, as that's basically locked up. Who knows how this college football season will go, but we will find out Saturday night on ABC against Stanford what this Oregon Ducks team is going to look like. And I'll tell you what, Steve, Oregon versus Stanford for, it feels like a decade, has just always been not just a great matchup, but a game that's gone down to the wire. We'll be giving a prediction later on in the show, but what can we expect a little bit in a tough, physical Stanford team week 1 against these Ducks?
You said it yourself, man. They are tough. They are physical. This is a team, we've seen it again year after year. Stanford wants to run the football, and this is a team, they're going to come out. They're not going to shy away from that. So it's really going to come down to, the guys up front for Oregon. How do they hold up? Are they getting penetration through the offensive line and getting into that backfield? Let's talk a little bit about some of the players that Oregon's bringing in as well. We talked about such a high-ranked class. That's led by Justin Flo. He's a linebacker, number 6 recruit in the nation. And I don't know if you've seen the photos of this guy, man. If there's a college version of DK Metcalf, it is Justin Flo. This is a guy, he might be sub 2% body fat again. He is just absolutely a brick wall in the middle, and he's not alone. They also brought in Noah Sewell, another linebacker, number 13 in the nation. So we're talking about adding 2 top 15 linebackers to a already very talented Oregon defense. I fully expect an absolute thriller Saturday night against Stanford, and I expect a very physical game.
And let's not forget Kayvon Thibodeau, who many last year going into the season had as the number 1 recruit in the entire country. He'll be a sophomore, plays the defensive end position. Last year, it's a really hard position to go from high school to a Power 5 conference. But we really saw, when you saw the Ducks turn the corner last year, by the end of the season, Kayvon Thibodeau was wrecking on Pac-12 offenses. And so we should get a full season, maybe a last season in Eugene out of Kayvon Thibodeau. So I think the Oregon defense will want to be physical in their own right. David Shaw and the Stanford Cardinals will get a chance to see that on Saturday night. When we come back, we are switching over to MLB baseball. We'll be doing a recap on the 2020 Seattle Mariners. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Upper Left Sports. and we are back on Upper Left Sports this Friday morning, and we are talking Mariners. And this was a team, Steve, it seemed like the MLB was really the last league to get everything put together. It was pretty frustrating at times. You know, as an MLB fan, you want to see as many games get played as possible. Felt like the players and the owners, and they just couldn't really come together until finally we said, okay, we're going to have a 60-game season. And I'll tell you what, every Mariners fan out there said, 60 games, that might be the best chance we've had in a long time to make the playoffs.
It really is.
As most years, those first 60 games for the Mariners are promising. They jump out to a huge division lead, and we don't need to tell you the rest of the story. Now, this season, on September 2nd, the Mariners were only 2 games out of playoff contention. We thought, you know what? Maybe this is it. Maybe they can make a wild card appearance. Maybe we can end that playoff drought. And then what happened?
And the Mariners showed up. Yeah, we've seen it, man. We've seen it over the last few years. The Mariners have seemingly done this. We get to